What's up, gamers? I'm your host, Cobra, and this is the Freeroll. On today's show, I've got a special discussion for you on NFT royalties with a specific focus on gaming NFTs. Let's start things off by reviewing the actual news. Earlier this week, Magic Eden made a huge announcement that caught the attention of all of NFT Twitter. And the announcement is that they are shifting to an optional royalty fee structure. Now, this is a very interesting move. What it means is that moving forward, the sellers are no longer going to be responsible for the royalty payments like they used to be. That payment used to come out of each sale. Instead, the buyer is going to be responsible for paying that fee, and it's going to be presented to them as optional if they're buying on Magic Eden. This means that if a NFT was listed for 10 Sol, and it had a 10% royalty, that price is now 11 Sol, but the final 1 Sol, which represents the 10% royalty, is actually optional. Now, this is happening because there have been several new marketplaces popping up that have chosen to skip paying the royalties altogether. And the reason why they're able to do this is because the royalty payment hasn't actually been coded into the associated smart contracts. And so really all marketplaces have the option of foregoing the royalty if they choose. It's just been that up until recently, they have all chosen to honor the creator's wishes. However, as the market gets more competitive and we have a lot more marketplaces competing for users, it's really easy to remove fees, especially when they're not fees that are going to go to you, but rather to somebody else. And so that is what Magic Eden has done here. Instead of removing them entirely, they have put the onus on the buyer, which is something that I don't really love, and we will discuss why. And for those of you that are not familiar with Magic Eden, they are the largest marketplace option for the Solana blockchain, and that in and of itself is significant. But they've also recently added support for Ethereum NFTs as well, and this, in my opinion, makes them the second most important third-party marketplace next to OpenSea itself. The reason why I don't like this change is that it creates a whole bunch more additional confusion specifically for buyers. Now, what happens when you choose to forego paying the royalty is really nothing. You pay a cheaper price and you save that royalty payment for yourself. You're still going to get the NFT, it's still going to be in your wallet, and you will still own it. However, the project creator can see whether or not you paid the royalty. And if the royalty is important to their business model, then there's a real chance that they may choose to not honor the NFT sales that didn't pay the royalty. So this means that if, for example, an NFT entitled you to play a game or entitled you to an airdrop and you purchased it without paying for the royalty, then you might be at risk of not receiving that airdrop or not being able to use that NFT in-game. Of course, long term, the market is going to shake things out and we will have some stability around this topic again. However, in the interim, you're going to have to approach your shopping very carefully, especially if you're on Magic Eden or any of the zero royalty fee marketplaces. I have my suggestions for how to approach that problem in the meantime, and we're going to discuss that a little bit later. However, first I want to talk about how this applies specifically to NFTs in gaming or Web3 gaming. Now, this is major news for the Web3 and NFT space in general. However, as it applies specifically to gaming projects, I see it as mostly a non-story. The reason why is that video game players are already used to and conditioned to paying for their content. Nowadays, that can look and take many different forms. The traditional manner of buying a game for 60 or 70 bucks is still an option in many cases. That sometimes comes along with the option to pay for a season pass or some downloadable content, and that's updates to the game so that you have more to play. There's also lots of games out there that are available on eShops and able to be instantly downloaded for a price. And then there's the largest segment of video games today, mobile games, and those typically are free to play, but always come along with a whole bunch of in-app options which allow you to spend money to complete the content quicker or just play the game a little bit more. So there are really no such thing as a truly free game out there. The ones that operate under a free model all have a different method of monetizing their properties and IP, and therefore I see no reason why video game players would have any issue with having that cost simply shift to a royalty payment instead of an in-app purchase or an additional purchase that they make to download some content. Of course, not everybody in the space is actually a video game player, and that is going to create some short and medium term confusion and issues for projects as well. Now, if you're on Immutable X, it seems like you've been insulated from this issue, at least for now, because they have coded in the royalties. However, for projects that are operating on OpenSea or Magic Eden or any of the other marketplaces out there, they now have this issue to deal with. Now, all projects really do have to start thinking about this topic and start making some decisions, but it is urgent for any projects that are on the Solana blockchain because Magic Eden is a major force for Solana, and there's going to be lots and lots of sales that happen with no royalties on Magic Eden Solana. Magic Eden does also support Ethereum, but it's new and they've got a relatively small market share there, so it's less of an issue for the Ethereum-based projects. However, there are plenty of other marketplaces out there as well that are offering zero royalty transactions on Ethereum, and so really every project has to start thinking about how this may or may not change or impact their business plan. As such, I have reached out to a few of the projects that I am invested in to get their feedback. Two in particular, Everseed and Mecha Fight Club, are Solana-based projects that we've already made some investments into, and quite frankly, I would like to make additional investments into right now, but want to get some clarity around these issues before we start spending our money. So I reached out to both project teams to see if they had an official response, and the general response has been that they are working on an announcement. Now, in the case of Everseed, their founder has come out with an announcement that essentially says there will be no penalty for any buyers that choose not to pay their royalties. However, this is a temporary measure and that is subject to change. But in the meantime, they're not going to go back and retroactively penalize anybody that chose not to pay the royalties. However, they ended the message by saying they hope we are still willing to pay the royalties. Anyways, for me personally, I am still going to try to purchase another Ranger or two for my collection, and I will be paying the 5% royalty that Everseed charges. So how should we approach this problem as players and traders, investors ourselves? My recommendation is a very simple one. If you are long on a project, and certainly if you intend to interact with it, with your NFTs, and play the game itself, then pay the royalties. This is part of their business plan. It is normal to pay for video game content, and long term they're going to need to continue to generate funds in some fashion. So whether it's royalties or some other way, you should expect to be paying for your video game content, and you should continue to do so here as well. However, if you're just trading, especially if you're just day trading and don't have a long-term investment in the project itself, I see no reason to pay the royalty today. You're not going to be harming the NFT in any fashion, and the person that buys it off of you will also have the choice of paying the royalty. So if they are interested in the project long term, then they can go ahead and pay that royalty themselves, and they will not receive any sort of downside or penalty. My prediction for how the zero royalty movement is going to impact gaming projects specifically is going to go in a few different directions. The projects that are having success today, and certainly the ones that ultimately do make it to mainstream adoption in the future, I think they're going to keep royalties in place. However, those projects are all going to shift to an in-game marketplace and move away from these third parties altogether. We already have a great example in Axie Infinity. You don't buy and trade Axies on OpenSea, you do it via the Axie marketplace. And we already know that Otherside is going to have their own marketplace as well for everything that operates on the Otherside metaverse. That is going to have its own fee structures, and we're going to see the majority of transactions taking place in that marketplace as well. I expect to see this happen with really all of the projects that are successful in terms of standing up a game that players are interested in spending money on and playing every single day. Then there's going to be a whole bunch of other games that go the other route and try to apply more of a free-to-play mobile game model to their project. Those are games that I expect will go zero royalty in order to increase trading. They're likely going to be NFTs that are worth a lot less, but still have some value, and they will simply shift their revenue generation to another area. That could be additional in-game purchases, it could be additional minting, it could be a battle pass, but they're going to need to raise funds in some fashion. So even the projects that go zero royalty, expect there to be some cost in there somewhere. And then finally, it's also likely that we will see some projects attempt a novel approach to this problem and try something that we haven't even considered today. Those will be very interesting to watch as well, because if anybody comes up with a good go-to-market plan that we haven't talked about today, then they're going to have a real advantage and likely do well. There's also likely going to be a whole bunch that try some interesting things that fail. So I would consider that a more risky approach, but one with a lot of upside as well. And that wraps up today's edition of the Freeroll. I hope you enjoyed this discussion about royalties, and if you did, consider giving me a follow on Twitter. That's where I love to engage with the Web3 gaming community and answer all of your questions. Also, do me a quick favor and double check that you've hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps to support the channel.